Well, one down, and we now relax, Josh. We're at segment 2. Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Now, do you immediately think of a specific movie when you think of Relax by Frankie Goes to Hollywood, or no?
I'm so glad you asked. It's yes, Kill the Prime Minister of Malaysia. Zoolander. Yes. How could you not think of that?
I mean, because I remember, like, at first, Relax was tied to the T-shirts to me, right? And the video, and you'd see, like, the I Love the 80s or the One Hit Wonder stuff.
Yes.
That was a pop-up video and stuff. But it is the rare song that had a distinct, like, headspace for me, and then was completely replaced by another headspace to the point where I almost forget the first part of it, which was so pronounced, to another. And and Zoolander took that away. So, but you want to give a little bio here, Josh, and run numbers as well, double thread it?
Yep. So Frankie Goes to Hollywood, welcome to the Pleasuredome. It is their #1 highest ranked album on Best Ever Albums. It was released in 1984. It's number 318 in the 80s, and Frankie Goes to Hollywood is ranked number 1,538 in the overall artist rankings. So I love that it's a completely arbitrary metric because you have no way to know who's next to them.
I think it would be hilarious if we crafted, like, where it came from and came up with our own random score for some of these albums to see if we could come up with a metric that gets to our own score that way. So
Yep.
I'll work on that.
So Frankie Goes to Hollywood was formed in 1980. The name from the band comes from a New Yorker magazine article saying Frankie Goes to Hollywood about with a picture of Frank Sinatra going to it and being mobbed by his fans on the in the photo. The lead singer is named Holly Johnson, and other members of the group are Paul Rutherford, Mark O'Toole, and Brian Nash, and Peter Gill. Now, they kind of emerged from the Liverpool punk scene, and the lead singer, in the late 70s, and the lead singer had played in a band previously, a punk band called Big in Japan. He had played bass on that. Never heard of that band, but Peter
You
Gill's
want to hear All Music's one sentence description at the beginning of Big in Japan? I always like these.
Sure.
Right? It says, in the annals of Liverpool punk, Big in Japan occupy much the same legendary status as London's the London SS. The major difference being that Big in Japan gigged and recorded with some success.
Okay.
Which I guess means that the London SS did not. But and it also says they were so furiously disliked on the local scene that the young Julian Cope circulated a petition begging them to break up.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Wow.
So this Relax was, the song was released in October of 83 and finally sort of got steady airplay in the UK, and then they played on Top of the Pops in January of 84, and that rose the album's or the song's fame on the charts. And then the album itself kind of became, and the band became, kind of notorious because of the overtly sexual nature of the record sleeve and the lyrics. And
can I take a guess here, Josh?
Yes.
Just for context.
Yep.
Can I ask the $1 million question here?
Yes.
And I'm using this in the literal way, not the get you canceled way, right? Mm-hmm. Like this is a very gay identity band, right? This struck me as a very gay album.
Yes.
Like not, I guess a pejorative, but like clearly celebrating.
Yes.
Yeah.
No,
okay.
that's right on point.
The
lead singer was openly gay, and I think that's another where the controversy, or controversy quote unquote, came from. Their kind of, the video for Relax also depicts this kind of gay S&M club where.
Well, the Pleasuredome would be my guess, right? Is that what?
Yes,
I'm guessing, because I remember the video and I look at the album title. I'm like, I guess that's the Pleasuredome.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yeah, and you know, there's a drag queen in the video, and muscular guys in leather, and somebody dressed as a Roman emperor. So yes, all fitting with the Pleasuredome.
And the lyrics
aesthetic.
take you there too. It's
Yes.
not. I mean, they don't go right in, but I think, and that's why I was surprised. The punk. I'm like, this seems more like club scene, but I guess not.
Yeah, I also remember seeing this, at least part of this video in Brian De Palma's movie Body Double, which is another kind of famous movie from the 80s. It's so kind of bizarre the way it cuts to this video. It's like a non sequitur almost. The way it comes up in the film, it caught me off guard for sure. But so Relax kind of, you know, remained on the charts, and then the second track on Welcome to the Pleasuredome, or the second single I should say, is Two Tribes, and that also got some, I mean, that is an anti-war song, anti-nuclear war song, and there's a person who does a impression of Ronald Reagan on it. And
okay. I thought it was like generic politician. I couldn't tell if it was designed to be like a Margaret Thatcher figure, but Ronald Reagan, same. It's a male, but I was like,
yep.
You know, they're British, so I don't know if it was, but okay, that makes sense.
And they appear, lookalikes appear of Ronald Reagan and the Russian leader Chernenko in the video, directed by Godley and Cream. We talked about them before, and there was also an extensive T-shirt marketing campaign with T-shirts saying "Frankie says war, hide yourself," or "Frankie says relax, don't do it."
Yeah, I remember that one. Yep.
And then they had some, you know, two other singles off the album, "Power of Love" and "Welcome to the Pleasuredome." I should have said this at the top, but this is a double album, so it's an hour and 10 minutes, and obviously four sides that pretty much are interestingly titled themselves. So you have side one says Pray Frankie Pray, and then you've got Say Frankie Say on side 2, and then side 3 is Stay Frankie Stay, and then side 4 is Play Frankie Play. So they're definitely, I don't know if it's a concept album per se, but they're definitely trying something.
Well, it seems like you're supposed to be in the Pleasuredome, because that first track is a long like interlude almost to being in the Pleasuredome, and
I mean, that's the entire first album side of the album, really.
Yeah.
They have a little intro that's kind of very bombastic and epic sounding, and then it goes right into that 13-minute or almost 14-minute song.
Well, the two themes I saw lyrically seem to be like anti-war, right? And sex.
Yes.
Like, those seem to be juxtaposed, like, but not like against each other. It's like sort of you're in like a very overtly sexual song, and then it suddenly veers into like a very fearful, like anti-war, anti-nuclear weapons type of vibe, and it kind of veers back and forth between them, with weird political statement. Weird in the sense that like you're getting like basically like a hedonistic sex song followed by like a strict political tract.
Right.
So yeah. And
that's really kind of only the first, like, you know, first two sides kind of fall into that, and then it really kind of goes. We're kind of getting into our review, but it goes off into kind of like cover territory and maybe more pop synth oriented sounds, maybe a more traditional sounding album than the first side. So
how many covers? I counted at least 3 covers on this album. Are there more than 3?
I don't think so. Obviously Born to Run, which was a complete surprise, as we both...
Do you know The Way to San Jose is definitely a cover, for
That's
sure.
That's a Burt Bacharach song, yeah.
Yes, and War, right? They did... I don't know if it's a direct cover, but there's a lot of overlap.
Oh, yeah, they pretty much
you know, what is it good for? Yeah, exactly. So are there more besides just...
So technically, yeah, that Ferry Cross the Mersey song,
okay,
which is
who
first...
did that?
Jerry and the Pacemakers.
Oh my God, that's
originally.
like, my dad uses that as like a laugh line sometimes with stuff. Like, in fact, I'll say, do a tape of the show. He's like, "Have you done Jerry and the Pacemakers yet?" So there you go. There's a
Yeah.
deep cut right there. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's actually on that version I listened to. It's called "Wish the Lads Were Here" for whatever reason. But on
Same. Yeah.
Yeah, but on the track listing in Wikipedia, the song is just called "Fairy." Go in parentheses. So I don't know what the deal with that is.
Like Fairy ferry or
No,
Ferry?
ferry like a boat.
Like a boat
Ferry.
ferry. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. So like a journey ferry. Okay.
So, but it seems to be the same song, so they must have just retitled it. Wrapping up the bio a little, this album was quite popular. It reached it debuted at #1 in the UK because of advanced sales of 1 million, and it was a top 10 seller internationally as well, especially in countries like Sweden, Australia, New Zealand, Switzerland. But it was also, interestingly, this album kind of drew some criticism because a lot of the songs on here were already out as singles, and they were remixed for the album, so kind of double dipping on that front. And versus some of the bands we talked about where all of their most famous songs were singles but weren't on the albums, this seems to be the opposite of that. And so yeah, that was interesting also. But let's see what so yeah, this album's kind of a little, getting to more of the review, it's a little overwhelming at first. I enjoyed the kind of Pleasuredome sound. They were really throwing everything in the kitchen sink in there. It's definitely synth foundation, but they have some kind of like jungle sounds and seeming like Asian themes or pan flutes or something like that.
Cinematic sounds, I would say, is here at times.
Yes.
Yeah.
They go high art and cite the Kubla Khan poem by Samuel Taylor Coleridge, which is always kind of like a flag for me when I hear that poem. In a way too, their sound kind of reminds me of the Police. There's a lot of like interludes between songs, and there's a lot of layering and kind of chaos, or at least a lot of sound going on at the same time, the way I felt about when we talked about the Police albums. But yeah, you nailed it. It's really kind of about sex, and then it alternates to anti-war and kind of goes back and forth. And then by the time you get to the third album, you've got the cover. You start getting into the covers, and the Born to Run cover, which I really didn't feel offered anything new on Born to Run.
Mean, it's a vamped up version of Born to Run, I'd say. It's like a, would you say it like, I mean,
it's not Wall of Sound, I guess.
Well, no, it's hard to like I said, it's hard when you're reading the lyrics on some of the songs. It's hard to not look at some of these things as sort of like a queer take on straight culture, you know what I mean? And like Born to Run's like Bruce and his jeans, working man, and it's just sort of like, what if we took it and flipped it, you know what I mean? To like kind of like in the Pleasuredome Born to Run, which, so from that end, I enjoyed it, because it was familiar enough that you're like, oh, they're kind of playing it, no pun intended, straight, but also they're like, clearly winking and nodding, I mean, with the choice, right? They do Springsteen, and then they dealt with Burke back, you know what I mean? It's kind of, the choices are kind of comical at times, placement wise.
There's a song on here called Ballad of 32, which really kind of reminded me of like a Pink Floyd song, but with more sex in it.
Orgy, I would say. It reminded me of an orgy is what it reminded me of. Yeah.
And then you've got the hilariously titled Crisco Kisses, which is clearly intentional and an homage to a more queer culture. So that's like, dripping all over this album.
Oh boy, that your use of word, you were dancing so delicately, Josh, and doing it actually made it sound even funnier. So, but yes, that's why I said it's like, it's although it's funny whenever in 1983 or 84 or 85 this stuff is going into the
Yes.
I just think up until the mid 90s maybe, like there was way more influence of gay culture than people realized, but it was like layers, right? There was some that gets in but people don't quite realize it, like Freddie Mercury, you know what I mean? And then there's stuff that's like overtly gay, like It's Raining Men or The Village People or this, or just where you're just kind of laughing because it's like it's clearly, I mean, even disco as a concept is just sort of there. And it's just always funny when like Vogue later with Madonna, although that was a much more knowing thing where you're trying to introduce it, but it's always funny when that stuff, you just imagine it playing in like, I don't mean to pick on like South Dakota or something, but like in a mall in South Dakota,
right.
And a song from an album called Welcome to the Pleasuredome, which, is there and subversive. And, I even think Relax, as its own thing, right? It's basically about an orgasm, right? Along the way. So.
And
that made me laugh.
I mean, the final song is called Bang, so
yes,
a minute long, but
the coda.
Yes, exactly, the coda to end the album. So yeah, maybe I'm not, now that we've talked about it a little bit, maybe I'm not giving this album enough credit. It's probably, maybe it is a seminal album in some sense, but
literally and figuratively at times, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But there definitely is an artistic intent behind it, and we haven't really. I mean, we haven't at all discussed kind of the rise of gay culture and queer culture in music and its place in pop music at this time. And so that's kind of what this is doing, and maybe an example of that.
Yeah, and I enjoyed this as an album, too. I mean, it's got a little bit of, Kiss level lyrics in it. There's stuff like love on the run, wish you were here, my love has got a gun, wish you were here, the people I meet, there's always a treat, wish you were here. It's like, yeah, okay. Yep. So it's not, you're not getting, that's why I think it's so funny when it veers from like that type of like basically, like I said, Kiss level lyricism. It's like, and now let's talk about the effects of nuclear. I just at times it reads like there's like a hedonistic thing of people connecting and like a sex vibe. It's like, and now let's take a stop from this orgy to talk about war and why it's like as a break kind of. But I know that to some people it's gonna be like, oh, this album, but it's like there's also a sonic palette of it that I liked because it's very intentional in the fact that it's being subversive at times, but it's also, like I said, it's a very at times like over the top cinematic take on things, no different than like something like in terms of the scope, like something that like Bad Out of Hell was doing when we did Meatloaf, right? Where it's like almost vampy and over the top, nodding and winking, but also playing it very straight at different times. And so it keeps you kind of on your edge a little bit. And I always like, if you're going to do a double album to me, I'd rather you just make it ambitious because at least that can justify why you're doing a double album. If you're just doing a double album, it seems like you're piling on 8 more songs just to say you can make it. And this falls in that category where it's like, yeah, there's a concept. Maybe I don't totally understand it. But it was a little bit more of a clear concept than some of the RD 60s and 70s doubles that were supposed to be concepts, right? Like I got the idea that we were in the Pleasuredome and I kind of could listen to the songs with that as beat, like you're under this, dome of the Pleasuredome, and here's everything that's inside of it. And even though at times it's like, well, that's weird that that's in the Pleasuredome. Let's run with it. How can all this go together?
Yeah.
So I got that from it, and I like the bass lines on a lot of songs in this. There's quite a few songs that I really enjoyed. I want to do a couple standouts from my end of things. I really enjoyed "Wish the Lads Were Here." I really enjoyed Black Night, White Heat, and The Only Star in Heaven. That combination of tracks, I was a big fan of. That sort of the run toward the end in particular, I thought was very strong. The Welcome to the Pleasuredome, even though it's 13:40, didn't bug me as much as something that long normally does because I got what they were going for. It was like sort of like you were passing into it. I did laugh that the beginning had Snatch of Fury in the title. World is my oyster, Snatch of Fury made me laugh because I'm like, boy, there's a lot of visuals there, right? So, and yeah, you get into the Pleasuredome, and then basically they tell you relax. And, in this case, relax means while you enter, let's go ahead and have an orgasm on the way in. And now that we're done, let's talk about war and go tribal beats. And then we're going to go into Tag and Fury and go right back into some sex. Let's do a couple covers with Born to Run in San Jose. And then we got the orgy track and Crisco Kisses. And it's like, you know what I mean? It's taking you along the way. And it's like, I would love to talk to the artist to see, how did you sequence this? Was there, you know what I mean? Like when you were putting it together, like, and you envisioned being in the Pleasuredome, you know what I mean? Like, what did it mean? But yeah, this one was a thumbs up for me. I enjoyed the ambition. I enjoyed the fact that it was different. I enjoyed the bass lines. It had some of the elements of the 80s sound that were recognizable as the 80s sound, but because it wasn't heaped in and over the top, it didn't intrude as much as sometimes that does, or wear down, maybe is a better way to put it. And yeah, I liked it. And I can do campy sometimes, and at times this was campy, but in a way that made me smile. So
yeah, agreed. I give it a thumbs up as well. It kept my interest. So for a double album, that's definitely saying something. And as you said, there's kind of a lot to unpack if you start thinking about the themes
and nothing at the same time.
Yes, exactly.
It's like both,
Yeah. So yeah, check it out. Even if I wouldn't even say, you can kind of jump around on the album a little bit and get a feel for it. I don't think you have to listen to the entire thing, but there's
the Reagan clone speaking parts. I don't know if they're essential listening, and they're something Ballad of 32, which is as much soundscape as it is track. I don't know if that's essential listening to it. Bang, the last track is basically 1 minute closure. So, but once you get past some of that, there's 10 to 11 tracks of what I consider to be pretty solid album content.
Yeah. Let me ask you this to just close now that
Sure.
Did you ever think about Relax as a sexual song?
Yes.
In the terms of it being a single?
When you want to come? Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
For some reason that
even
never
as a
crossed
kid,
my mind.
Even as a kid, when I watched
that
that video, I recognized it as a sexual song, but you're both because you weren't necessarily immersed at that time, when you're a kid, and I didn't exactly grow up in the boonies, but even then you're not processing, this is a culture, but you recognize it as like a sex song. You're just trying to figure out, how, right, along the way. And it's like, there's a surprisingly low amount of women here. And then you start to get smarter, you know what I mean? It's a sex song because you can have sex in different ways, right? But no, as soon as I got savvy, I read lyrics, right? And it's like, relax, don't do it when you're gonna come. It's like, that can only mean one thing, really. So, so yes, no, I always process that, and it's because I had the visual and I read lyrics. So the whole at no point, even if I didn't have an exact idea, but yes, I did. To answer your question. Yeah,
for some reason it completely went over my head until I was listening to this album and looking at the lyrics. I was like, oh, of course.
I mean, to expand the Kiss analogy, it is as much a sex song as Love Gun is, right? You know what I mean? Right. At no point, did I. And there isn't another layer where it's actually it's euphemism. No, it's a euphemism for sex. Yeah,
right. So it's not subtle. There's no subtext.
It's not even cheeky. It's just now we're gonna do it. And I think that was part of it. You know what I mean? Because to celebrate it, without because think about at the same time, right? Wham is going on, and George Michael had to live a double life, basically, right? As a huge heterosexual sex symbol who, when you look at Wham videos now, it's kind of well, come on, you know what I mean? In the modern context. But there, it sort of was more just he's so and remember when he goes solo, right? He sort of reinvents himself as a definitively more heterosexual image, right? Leather jacket and jeans and, stuff like that. And so a lot of that was just sort of every once in a while you're slipping in something that kind of winks. And Elton John, right? Same thing. He's creating some of the biggest songs, and yet you can read all of them and have absolutely no idea, and he's not even winking and nodding as much as somebody or even doing what Morrissey was doing, the Smiths, right? He's ambiguous with his pronouns, but I mean, this is stands out for the fact that like it's like no, you're you know what I mean? Like there wasn't a lot of like couching of it. Which,
yeah, it's very overt in that respect. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then you think of somebody like today, like Frank Ocean today, right? Who basically is able to sort of like write songs from a you know what I mean? Like definitively his subjects, you know what I mean? You know exactly the type, you know, the romantic relationship he's having. He's not making it universal. He's talking about, you know, same sex relate, you know, but that in the 80s, that's a very new thing. And so I don't mean to keep harping on that, but I think it's important because it's really the first album we've listened to that is this overt, you know what I mean? In terms of being, you know, rooted.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Oh, also hilariously, I wanted to end on this. They had a video game released for the computer in 1985 called Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Yes.
On what system?
On a computer.
Or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was based on the band's music, imagery, and slogans. And the objective was to explore the town of Mundainesville to find the Pleasuredome.
that's worth. So back then, right? Like you're more knowledgeable on this side. It's like it wasn't such a system, right? Because you could take the code or whatever and play it on a computer. So when I think of the Commodore, it's more just that the Commodore was the most mainstream, right? But you could basically play it. Okay, gotcha.
There was definitely, it was released for the Commodore, so you're right on that, and also other kind of home computers for that were really more British. I think the Amstrad and then the ZX Spectrum.
Okay.
So yeah, they were kind of, you know, in the Apple IIe era and kind of the Commodore.
Macintosh.
Yeah. Commodore definitely one of the more popular home computers at that time. But it's hilarious. You can see the cover of the game on Wikipedia and a screenshot of what the game looked like, and just so funny.
Are you gonna do a playthrough on Twitch? I think
That'd be
extra bonus CTS content. Josh plays man. Welcome to the Pleasuredome on
hilarious
computer. Yeah.
And the game features chiptune versions of Relax and Welcome to the Pleasuredome. So
chiptune. Nice.
Oh man, hilarious.
I'm gonna put that as like an ambitious project, like a Twitch stream of Josh playing anything that has a video game attached to it.
I want to now. I want to see if I can find those versions of the song. Maybe I'll put that in the montage.
I like it. That would be something unique about these J&J episodes. We go deep cut. So yeah, thumbs up for me on this one. Enjoy.